By popular demand, it's finally here. You can now go to americansongwriter.com/merch to get your Pitch List t-shirt before they sell out. Use the coupon code PITCHLIST, all one word, all caps, Pitch List, to save 20% on your order. Hey everybody, Chris Lindsay here, and you're listening to Pitch List. Join us on a deep dive into the heart of what makes writing songs and making music so magical. Let's find out what makes songwriters tick, and along the way, remember why we love music. Welcome to Pitch List. My guest today has had an unusual career. He's had success as a record producer, a film and TV scorer, a composer of children's songs, and along the way, he even ran Disney Records. He's a fascinating guy who has seen the business from both sides of the glass, from executive to recording artist. Hey everybody, you're listening to Pitch List. My name is Chris Lindsay, and this is Fred Mollin. Well, now, you, like I, have been in this business a while. Do you marvel at the change sometimes? Okay, let me ask you another way. I was telling a younger kid I was writing with the other day, I'm like, he had a laptop with even GarageBand, but Logic, whatever, Pro Tools. That laptop with Logic is like a $3 million studio in 1988. I mean, really, it's that level of technology. And they don't really understand that. Do you ever think about that, about how much gear it took back then? And it was very exclusionary to who could do this.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I'm a big fan of Buddy Holly, and he was a big inspiration. I always think about Buddy Holly. I'm going, what would Buddy Holly think about an iPhone? What would he think about, your laptop being, Abbey Road, basically, And for me, having worked through a time when, because I started producing early, I was like 18. So we're talking, 1972, 73, I started producing demos in Toronto and then producing albums and fell into things really fast. And of course, that was 16 track to 24 track analog. So, now when I look at what's available now, it's mind blowing. And on so many levels, for us, certainly, professionals who make their living making important music, to have Pro Tools, for instance, and the opportunities we have and how incredibly important the technology is for us and how it just saves such time and it also allows us to do so much is brilliant. The one thing I don't like is certainly when people are just being able to use the technology but without the talent and the drive and the and the good ideas, because obviously you can do a lot with it if you just know the technology but have no talent. Absolutely. And as the same discussion I was having, I made the point, you can drown in choices. Well, that's a great part of making a record.
That's right.
To me, being a producer is about being able to make decisions.
Yes.
Immediately.
And in the old days, I was explaining this, and these guys are just kind of making the connection when I said it, I think. Tape is a destructive editing format, right? So when you hit red, you can't undo.
There's no word undo. No.
And it kind of, I remember watching this kid kind of, it clicked in. He's like, oh, yeah, that's right. So that right there forces you, like you said, as a producer, as an artist, to make decisions. And I think we miss that.
I think, first of all, you've hit on some really great stuff. I think that I'm very blessed to have grown up as a producer and as a musician and arranger at a time when decisions needed to be made right away. And it gave me a lot of muscles that people don't have now. And so when you do have someone who doesn't have that experience, then you do have tens and tens and tens of, these tens of thousands of choices to make, and you don't make them till the final mix. I'd be pulling what's left of my hair out to be dealing with that. I like making decisions, and that's based on how I grew up, with the technology available.
Yeah, and I would submit that it always work, and obviously there are brilliant records being made right now on digital
of
formats all over the world.
Of course, yeah.
But there's something very valuable about having to sort of commit and then work with that commitment. And
well, I'm a performance-oriented person, so I bring that to the records I make.
That's a great point, because that is one of the key roles of a producer, right? Is to make those decisions on ground level. What do you think are some of you, you've produced a lot of music. What are some of your takeaways as things that are, great things that you've learned, important things about producing records like this? Give me some more.
Well, I mean, I think you've hit a really important one, which is, as a producer, first of all, I'm an artist's producer. So it's their record. It's not mine. I'm there to facilitate their vision. I'm there to make their dreams come true and help them. And if they don't know what they want, I'm there to help them find what they want. And but at the end of the day, it's their record, and I do whatever is necessary for them. They have the final say in everything, and we work as a team, but ultimately it's their record. I know a lot of producers who don't feel that way. They feel like, well, you've hired me, you want my sound, do what I tell you to do. That's bullshit. I don't do that. I'm working.
I agree with you.
I work very hard to make the artist who is going to have their face on the cover. And so I think what I've learned, in doing records for so long, is, again, to be able to bring a sort of selflessness to the project where you're really working for the artist, but you're also running the show. And so ego is not a part of it for me. It's really about leadership, and it's really about how to facilitate that artist's vision or create that vision with them. And so I think that's what I really consider to be the essence of how to be a good producer.
Yeah. Ego, well, there's a sign right there on our wall. It says, ego is weakness. That's a quote from my wife.
Well, it is.
And it is. And it's posted right there for a reason. We've sat at this table for many years in many configurations, sometimes with artists, sometimes with not, but it's in the line of sight so that it might be seen.
Yeah. I had a 15-year run as a TV and film composer full time, and it was a wild run and very successful.
Yep, and I've got it in my notes.
Well, that's okay. It was a left turn that I took in '85 till about 2001, and I fell into it, and I just did really well with it. But I never expected to be a film and TV composer. The reason I'm bringing it up is because if that is going to teach you about losing your ego, that may be the best teacher, because everyone thinks a guy who writes music for a film or TV must be like a cherished part of the team, and you get your name up pretty high on the credits, etc. And music is really important, obviously, on all sorts of TV and film. But you are treated literally the same way that someone on the crew is treated. I mean, honestly, it's Randy Newman said to me, "Oh, Fred, we're all lowly dogs," and that's Randy Newman talking, who does the biggest films, But he said, no, he said, listen, he told me, he said, never take yourself seriously on this stuff. He said, literally, you're so replaceable, and all they want is you to do your job and everyone else to do their job. And I loved the ability that I lost my ego so easily and felt very good about that, by the way. But I've carried it over continually through my going back to making records full time in the same way. Like there's just no ego left on that. I'm sure I have ego in other parts of my life that come out, but I've been beaten down by the best.
Well, yeah, I'm right there with you, brother. I don't think you can survive. Well, I won't say that. You can't. I've seen guys and gals who have a really terrific career and maintain this big ego, but they tend to sort of burn out, and that's all they do. They don't move into being a co-writer, working with younger writers, and let them, steer the boat, and now they're going to help navigate.
But don't you also think, let the artist have the bigger ego?
Yeah, of course,
because they're the ones who are going to be having to have a lot of people, to please, and they're the one they have to live their life possibly in the spotlight,
and they have to go sell it, man.
Yeah,
you're a co-owner in this asset. Yeah, they're going to go out and get on a bus, sick or not.
Exactly. And I'm on the next
right.
gig. Yeah.
We can go down to Mexico and write in a cool house on the Pacific Ocean for a week. Yeah. They're going to be out in Iowa. I'm not saying they love it, but it's tough life.
And again, what's great is that It's really important for me when a producer has that ability to see the difference, and be able to say, I'm here to make this record with you and make it your beautiful record, your masterpiece. And then you go and sell it. I go to my next gig. And, that's a wonderful balance for me,
Yeah, I think it's great. And I think a producer, there are some other, and I'm sure you would agree, there are some other forces in there. A producer can also have a good understanding of what the record label or the studio, what their needs are, and making sure that those are presented to the artist or are on the table at all times. So that if you have to say to the artist, hey, man, now remember this thing. We got to, I'm on your team, but we have to deal with them.
Yeah,
I got into that situation a lot. I think that was part of the job too.
I think we all do. I mean, again, if you're working for a major label, you're also beholden to them to deliver something that they can sell.
And they're writing the check.
They're the bank. So
right.
So I mean, if they say, listen, we really want this song to be the single, you work hard to make it as good as possible, and But again, everything that comes down to it is, it doesn't matter how much money they're putting into the project. It is the artist's project.
Agreed.
You have to have a very good balance of appreciation for the bank.
Yeah.
The bank is the label.
Absolutely. And I'm sure what you're saying too is just honesty, just being honest, being honest.
Yeah.
Now I want to backtrack into your two things. We want to talk about your children's record career, because I think that's phenomenal what you've done. And also, we've never spoken about that on the podcast. But before we do that, I do want to talk about your film and television scoring career. Now,
sure.
Let's go back to that and talk. So you said that you didn't really ever figure you were going to get into that. Did you just kind of tell us about that?
I fell through a trap door. I fell through a trap door on producing as well. I started producing records when I was a kid, and I was a singer-songwriter who wanted to be the next James Taylor in the early 70s. And then I started producing, and I really liked it. And I realized I liked my life behind the camera, so to speak. And same thing happened around 1985, where I got a phone call about doing a TV series out of Toronto where I was living, and that sort of begat another TV series. Then it begat some big U.S. series that were being done in Canada. And the next thing you know, I was a full-time TV and film composer, and had to work on my keyboard skills because I was working with all sorts of synths and my Kurzweil and all sorts of stuff, but I brought a lot of my record know-how into writing for TV and film. But really, the truth is that certainly I feel incredibly great about my career. For those 16 years, I worked my butt off. I was able to have a studio at home and raise my children with my wife at home. Their lullabies were Friday the 13th, part 7 and part 8. I only did the Disney Lullaby album when they were old enough that they didn't give a damn,
Yeah.
But I really liked my challenges for the years and years that I scored for TV and film. My accomplishments I'm very proud of. But I think I'm really good at about 3 or 4 things, and the rest of the things in my life I suck at. And I think that I'm a really good record producer. That's probably one or, so if I ever wanted, to be produced by somebody, I'd like me to produce me. But if I was making a movie, to be blunt, I would hire someone else to score it.
Really?
Because I wasn't to the manner born. I really wasn't the right call. A John Williams, a Jerry Goldsmith, a Dave Grusin, a Randy Newman.
Thomas Newman. These are all giants who really excel in 2 things. One, the loneliness of being, down there writing score after score, and, just being a cave dweller by yourself is not what I love to do. And secondly, I didn't have the chops, classically. I wasn't a studied musician, so I wasn't writing on staff. I was improvising and creating scores with my synths and samplers. And again, I think I did a pretty cool thing, but it was not what I wanted to do. I wanted to play music with others, and that means in the studio with my studio musicians and myself. I still love performing occasionally, but really making records is what I do best. And I've always felt that I'm proud of what I've done on TV and film. But by the way, I walked away from it, after 16, 17 years. Okay. Well, then I have 2 follow-ups. One, were
I
you
hope
living...
that wasn't too long an answer.
No, it's fascinating.
Okay.
Were you living in L.A.?
No, I was based out of Toronto. I'm a New Yorker who moved to Toronto when I was 17 because I had an opportunity musically there, and And then I started producing records, which then catapulted us into LA for 3 years, off of a song called Sometimes When We Touch, which I produced with Matt McCauley, which is a
giant
It
song.
was an iconic record. Yeah, we didn't know that at the time. We thought it would be a hit, but we never expected all these years later. But that Clive Davis then moved us to L.A. as his. He wanted us to be part of his production team, and then 3 years later, we wanted to have kids, and I didn't want to have kids in L.A. And I was sort of sick of L.A., so we moved back to Toronto. And so really, Toronto, I was based out of. Even during the film and TV years, I was back and forth to LA a lot, especially on certain shows. But a lot of it was done in Canada. And
and there's a lot of production in Toronto.
God, yeah,
I mean, more
well,
than
in Canada, in
it's crazy.
Vancouver and Toronto alone is probably there's more than anywhere else outside of LA.
Now it is interesting, and I only know a little about it. When I came here in '95, I was doing some small scoring work in LA, and I did one film once I moved here. But being that far away from the production, they didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about here. I mean, I was based out of Toronto. A lot of the series I did, and some of them were really quite successful, were shot in Toronto, and the post-production was in Toronto.
There you go.
But I did a few shows for Columbia and TriStar and other studios, and I'd have to fly in every week for meetings, and it was worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, let's talk about this, because I'm very curious. You said after 15 years you walked away.
About 16 years, yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. What happened?
Well, my life changed personally. My wife and I very lovingly split up, and I needed to go back to making records full time. I was really missing, like I said, what I think I do best, because I know what I suck at, and I know what I'm okay at, and I know I'm good at. And I really missed it, and I was lonely. Those 18 or 17 years, 16 years, I don't know how many years of nonstop doing like 3 series at once, squeezing in a movie, like you name it, all by myself. They were lonely, really lonely ways to make a living. And I also didn't feel I was, the perfect guy. I thought I was really good, and I amazed myself. But I walked away because I was burnt to a crisp.
Yeah. Did you feel, what would your typical, is it 12 hours a day you were doing, 10?
No,
Just depends?
No, I was very, my years of late night ended, as far as working late night ended when I was probably about 23, and I'd already been producing for about 7 years, or 6 years, believe it or not. My days as a TV and film composer, I just get up, by 10 in the morning, I'd be at the keyboards and staring at the first scene of the day that I'd be improvising my little first sketch. I'd work till 6.
Okay. But it is pretty lonely, and it's high stress too, I thought.
The pressure is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because especially on a high visibility international TV series, where you have to deliver a score a week. If you fall off the treadmill, again, speaking about what Randy Newman said, being lowly dogs, if you fall off the treadmill and you don't deliver that episode in time for the broadcast, you're fired. And they replace you in a millisecond.
Right, they got guys.
So there's a sword of Damocles over your head the whole time, knowing, keep your job. And that probably wore on me. But also, I think, like I said, the loneliness of it. I didn't use the arrangers. I mean, I orchestrated everything myself as far as the keyboards and synths and samplers. And the occasional orchestral score, I would bring an arranger in for that.
Yeah, it's... But I get it. I get what you're saying.
And an interesting thing for all those aspiring film composers out there and TV composers, it's always important, if you can, to wait till the final locked cut before you start writing your score, because you may be having to redo things over and over again if you're writing to a non-locked final edit, And we learned that really early on, because they'd say, "Oh yeah, no, you should start writing now." I'm like, "Well, okay," and we started writing, and then the next thing you know, that scene was gone, or it's 10 seconds longer, and none of the things you're writing are hitting in the right place.
Right, you built all this to work on these points
on the grid, and it's all not working. So wait till the final locked edit. It's better to have less time to write than more time than you'll be redoing, and and also another great thing I loved about series. I did about 3 or 4 that really ran a number of years. And it was such a delight once you are the score composer of record on on a TV series, a dramatic show, let's say, that after the first 3 or 4 episodes, the producer or producers, a lot of times it's multiples, they know what you're going to do and they trust you. Mm-hmm. And so the rest of the years that you work on this episodic TV series are really not about having to prove anything or audition anything. You just show up with the score at the mix. Either don't go to the mix or just deliver the score. And everyone's like, we know what Fred's going to do.
Right.
And they trust me. So the greatest part of doing a TV series is getting that trust early on.
Right.
And then no one meddles with you. And boy, oh boy, that's critical, because when someone starts meddling with you,
right,
it slows the process down. And also for some people like myself, it also derails you.
Oh, I think most people.
That's why I hated working the few times I worked on TV commercials, because then it really got into meddling full time, where people would just be like, you'd have literally the agency people, the product people, the other, the television producers, whatever, and everyone have a different idea, and it was just the most meddlesome misery, and all you're doing is selling some dishwashing lotion,
Right.
So, they'd have no sense of humor about it. And I was like, I'd so much rather be writing a score for something like a Twilight Zone episode, which, for instance, the Friday the 13th, Part 7, Part 8 movies that I did are those Jason slasher movies, which is, were never my thing, but I worked hard on them. But the Friday the 13th, the series, which was a dramatic series that ran for 72 episodes, 1-hour episodes, starting in 87, that was almost like a Twilight Zone series, because every week was about a cursed item that was sold at an antique store.
Wow. And
so it was, they were just really much more fun to write to than, let's say, a slasher film or something,
And like you said, if you're on it a long time, it makes sense. You sort of developed a strategy, a point of view of the music. You've got a little franchise built how you're doing it.
Yeah.
And then they trust you more, because having people meddle, it is a special kind of hell. I know that. I've had it even in making country records. It's like creative people can point to you and tell you that something's not working right. I'll give them that. When they start giving the solution, that's when I start going, no. Because they don't, I'll take it as something's not working right, or they wouldn't have this reaction. Now, their fix for it, forget it. That's just where I get. Mm-hmm. And I have one other thing I want to say. Did you get into the thing? This just terrified the living shit out of me on the projects I scored. They would cut the scene with a temp track, like the sound of silence. You know what I mean? Or like, just the most iconic fucking songs ever done, and then they're like, do something like that.
Yeah, well, and
they fall in love with it too.
Well, that happens a lot on movies more than the TV shows.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Because in TV shows, they know they can't do that too much, but it still happens. And to explain what a temp track is, it's the film editors, while they're putting the film together, will grab any piece of music they like and cut to that piece of music. And sometimes, of course, it'll be something like the Beatles.
Right.
And you're going, gee, I don't think I can really do something like the Beatles.
Right.
And I can't really come close to it, because then that's also copyright.
Right.
And prior knowledge is actually what would land you in court, and also you would lose in court.
That's correct.
So the great example of temp track Poison was Ghostbusters, which was they temped with I Want a New Drug by Huey Lewis.
I want a new. Yep.
So dun 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 dun. I want a new drug. Dun 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 dun. Ghostbusters. Same song.
Yep.
And Huey Lewis was told that they had used it as a temp track, so they were dead in the water, because it was prior knowledge. So Ray Parker Jr., who wrote and sang Ghostbusters, lost all of his royalties to Huey Lewis. And probably the word temp track probably makes him have a panic attack to this day.
Yeah.
Temp tracks were always exhaustingly annoying.
Yeah.
And I always would beg them not to do it.
Yeah, well, because in addition
then they get also emotionally married
right,
to it,
right? And then and it's like they're married to this incredible piece of magic, they can, and then they're the producer's like, well, we can't afford this song, so. Okay, Fred, get in there and give us,
something like it.
Yeah,
sure.
Hey Jude 2.
Yeah,
like okay.
No, my favorite was Purple Rain. They wanted me to sort of do
a
Purple Rain thing on a movie I had done. I'm like, I don't think you can afford to get it, and I don't think I can really do a Purple Rain.
You might need to call Prince.
Yeah.
I don't think Prince can do another Purple
No,
Rain.
exactly. So yes, temp tracks.
Yeah.
Oof, one of my favorites.
Yeah. There's a lot. But you know what? That being said, and like I said, I did a few little things, nothing compared to the incredible career you've had it. Although I think it's very interesting that you walked away from it. It is a fascinating business. On a good day, it's really fun, but it's a lot of pressure, and I totally get it.
I liked the accomplishment.
Right.
A factor was really, I felt so proud of myself. I also got to love a lot of the TV stuff that was done in Toronto where I lived. I became a very important part of the team of people, and I loved my teams of people. Mm-hmm. The actors I became great friends with, and the directors of different episodes and the producers of the show. I mean, these were, we were a family on the longer running shows, and that was a delight,
Yeah. Yeah. You get attached to people, don't you?
Well, again, I'm a social person, so that was a nice part, and that got me out of the studio, my home studio at times, to just go down to the set and even for an hour just to shoot the shit with people and feel a part of it.
Yeah, it is, and I had forgotten that. It is a lonely business compared to what I've spent the last 20 plus years getting in a room with really cool people and getting to hang out with them. That's the thing, and we try to do it on the podcast. We try to give a flavor of it. One of the most magical things about the co-write is just getting in the room with great, interesting people, and the hour before you start writing, the things that are discussed, every issue, and how open writers are, and how they just open their heart to you immediately. If you and I were writing today, we would be talking about things people just couldn't even believe. That when we don't know each other.
Yeah, you have to bond.
You do, right. And you have to bond quickly, and I think the writers over the years, you learn. I'm sure everyone holds some things back, but you hear pretty incredible things in a writer's room, like right away.
I do.
Right away.
I know that world, and I love it. I'm not a writer really but I'm a writer by necessity for songs. Mm-hmm. If an artist I'm working with in the studio needs me to help them write a song, I'll write with them. But certainly, I write for a reason. I don't just write songs for writing songs.
Gotcha.
I just wasn't not that person. I wished I was, but I wasn't.
Well, man, you've said it twice now, and I want to make a note for the listeners and for myself. You're a very successful man. You've said twice, basically you know what you're good at, and you know what you're not good at.
I'm very aware of what I'm not good at.
But I'm telling you, man, that is a great note. Because a lot of people, myself included, you can get into this thing where you're kind of good at a lot of stuff, and that's not going to cut it. It's very useful to know what you're really good at. I've talked to Tim McGraw, country artist. I heard him say it. Same thing one time. He goes, this was come up about what songs to do, what blah blah blah. He said, "Hey man, I got one can of beans and I know how to sell it." And I thought, man, that is great.
Yeah. No, I don't like that term they use now, which is stay in your lane.
Right.
I hate when people say that. But in reality, certainly I have, been able to focus on what I do best.
Right.
And I really let the heavy lifting of other things go to other people.
Yeah. And I think a clue for that and what it changed my life is when I went from being a performer and being in bands and playing bass, a sideman, moderately successful at that, became a writer, very successful, for a country writer. And it was like the light bulb. It's like, oh, within a couple of years, I'm like, okay, this is working at a much higher level. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. It almost like you get sort of, it's like a light goes on,
Right.
You sort of say, yeah, this is
yeah. And if
this is where I'm good.
And I guess what I'm trying to move toward is if you're not having that light in your life, maybe just keep moving around until you find it.
And there's a great, in my life, there's a great pride I have in the fact that I can do a lot of different things musically.
Sure.
But again, music is the world I'm talking about that I feel incredibly, proficient at. And clearly it's like a calling, like the priesthood. I never did anything else. But there are certain parts of making music that I'm probably that are more effortless.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what it takes to be successful at a specialty. Effortless means that you're really good at it. And that it comes natural to you.
And it doesn't cause you stress.
Right.
Because someone even said to me last week, I'm producing Kristen Chenoweth right now for a new project. And she's a huge star and a wonderful person. Like one of the greatest people. But, you know, every record I do when I'm walking in the studio to work with musicians that I love to work with here, people said to me, oh, you know, don't you get all stressed out before the first day? And I'm like, no. I mean, I feel like as long as I know the team of people I'm working with, I feel like the album's done already when I walk in.
Yeah. If you're working with the right people, these people are incredibly talented. The A level, all the musicians here.
Well, that's why I'm here. It's not because it's near the ocean.
Right.
You know,
no, that's right.
I would prefer it to be.
The studio scene here is unrivaled in the world. The engineers, the players.
Yeah, I bring everyone here. I mean, because there's nothing like it.
No, there isn't. And then if you've got if you have a great singer like her, then you've already chosen your material, and you know it's going to really. It's just a pure joy.
It is. It's so much fun.
To watch it all happen and just be like, oh my God, it's amazing.
You never want it to end, especially the tracking days. You really never want it to end.
It's so amazing, isn't it, to watch somebody really special do it. Mm-hmm. I got to work with this guy, Robin Zander from Cheap Trick.
Oh, sure.
He wanted to make a Americana record, and I produced for him a couple years back in here. And the very first morning, 10 a.m., we put this cool band together. He's going right in that booth there he wanted to sing scratches. I was impressed. I thought, well, maybe he will, maybe he won't. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm pretty scratchy. It's 10 in the morning. I just got a coffee. And then he goes in there and starts singing, and it's like he's driving nails, man. Me and the engineer just started laughing hysterically at how great it was. And I remember just thinking, oh my God, this is what's supposed to be happening.
Yeah,
it's an absolute joy.
And what happens too is when you bring an artist of that level, whether it's someone like that in the rock world like Robin, or, you know, I brought Johnny Mathis and Jimmy Webb,
incredible,
and Jimmy Webb,
which
here.
We're going to talk about too.
Yeah, but I'm saying, and you bring in Johnny Mathis or Jimmy Webb, who've seen everything.
Sure.
And Johnny especially, he's 80-something years old, and he's seen everything. And he looks at me and he goes, Fred, I've never seen anything like this, you know. And that's the greatest feeling.
Wow. The session you did for him here?
The 2 albums I've done.
2 albums,
you know, and just be able to be watching these musicians and the way I work with them and how instinctual they are and how giving and loving, and they listen to each other, listen to the artist, and they listen to me, and, you know, and their virtuosity is beyond belief.
It is. They're little magic makers.
Yeah. They're brilliant. There's nothing like it. That's why I'm here.
Stand by. We'll be right back with more Fred Mollin. Well, let me ask you this. Now, I did see on your resume, and maybe I have this wrong, but that you ran, are you a record guy too? Did you run a record company? Did you work for Disney?
I did a corporate year and a half at Disney where I was head of A&R for Walt Disney Records in Burbank.
I've heard of them.
And,
Dana, have you heard of them? I don't know. A little upstart called
Disney. And it was interesting. It was my first real job. I did it 2007 and 2008. And I had done a lot of work as a freelance producer for them.
Okay.
So I knew the world of making music for young children and up until what they call the tween age. And that was actually Walt Disney Records' greatest year, most successful year, because we had High School Musical, we had Miley Cyrus and Hannah Montana and all these things. It was wild. I had very little to do, by the way, with those particular projects because they were already grandfathered by the time I got in. But I ran the record labels A&R for a year and a half. And it was fascinating and incredibly interesting, and I learned a ton, and I was delighted when I left because I was a freelance person and a sensitive person and could not have probably done much more. But again, the accomplishment and the knowledge I learned. And now I have a small label with my partner Lee Shockey called Melody Place. And we're doing a wonderful thing now with our label, which is a small but hopefully powerful boutique label. And so I'm back now running a label for the first time ever running it. And it's fascinating for me to be on that side of it as well.
Yeah, and it's unusual. I've run into a couple guys that have done that. Was it a difficult? And I know Disney is such an iconic, and I've written for Disney before, and I'm even as a writer. The Walt Disney Company is its own universe. It's its own economy. It's its own. It's very difficult to describe, but it's like it does not run like the rest of the world.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. And I often wondered. We had these discussions, my friends and I that wrote for them. It's like I think they're so successful that they don't have these guardrails that, like, the money thing is just not a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's this really crazy company in really positive ways. But was for your first like straight gig? I mean, was it hard to do that, or was it just fun, or was it?
It was really everything. I mean,
challenging.
I mean, I had been a freelance musician, arranger, and producer all my life, and to sort of all of a sudden have an office and a desk and a parking spot, and and bosses and all this stuff. I mean, it was fascinating, hard at times, and I learned a ton. We did great work. We put out a lot of great stuff, and I just missed my life as a freelance musician.
Yeah, I think we're spoiled.
Yeah.
I think I
was. I can't.
No, I know I am.
Yeah.
I am too. I'm saying we have not the same careers, but we've both been in it most of our lives and been able to do well at it. And we become very spoiled to like we don't answer to anybody. Well, now here's the thing. We don't answer to anyone, but if we don't make enough money, we don't have any money. You know what I mean? It's like it's all on us. We're not. Mm-hmm. So that's the gamble. Is you get to be your own boss. You get to make your own calls. You don't have to answer to anybody, but there's no safety net.
There is no safety net, and it's a high price to pay for someone who's made their living that way to go get the safety net,
right?
But then have to deal with the corporate stuff. I mean, the thing I really hated about my experience, in the Disney year and a half, was that there were actually people who were jealous of me within the office, which was a large number of people, including one person who came on sort of in the middle of my tenure there, and I didn't like being I don't think anyone should be jealous of me. I can't really spend much time with me. So the idea of someone being jealous of me in my position there made me really pissed off, and made it uncomfortable, and was a good reason to leave just for that alone.
Wow.
Because I just felt like that whole corporate jealousy thing I never really understood, but there's a lot of that. I'm a people pleaser. I'm used to working with lovely people and just having a ball and treating people the way I want to be treated. So the idea that there were a few people who were jealous, it wasn't because I wasn't a sweet person, because I was. It was just that that probably bothered them more than anything.
Can I throw a theory at you?
Yeah.
It's because you didn't need the job.
Perhaps. Yeah. It's a really good point.
And that don't take whoever's listening, don't take this the wrong way. What I mean is, he didn't have to have that job. He wanted that job. He wanted that experience.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He has royalties. He's doing fine. He didn't have to have. There are a lot of people maybe in that corporate structure. This would be any company, not just Disney.
Exactly.
They, that's their life, and when someone's in there, they don't really understand that dynamic, and it's dangerous.
Right. And they, I think that's a very, very valid point. And I think it was also the fact that the people who were small-minded about me. And again, we're talking about a staff of just on my floor, it was like there was 80 people. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about 3 or 4 people maybe who I just never quite trusted after a while. I think it was also the fact that music was part of my job, as opposed to administration was part of theirs. And so I think there was that jealousy because, they wanted to do what I did,
Well, yeah. And there's this other thing in the corporate culture where you, me, anybody who's done this for a while, we live off of our accomplishments, right? We're like professional athletes.
Yeah, I don't think people like myself, and probably you, because I know that you're a wonderful writer and a musician. So when you have that kind of just creativity inside of you, it's hard to be in a corporate structure. Mm-hmm. And I don't care what kind of company it is.
Yes.
And so that's all. I mean, it was an interesting.
It's true.
You're right. It was a visit to another planet, for about a year and a half.
Yeah, but I still think it's a fun thing to do. And I think you probably, as a performer, as a writer, as a producer, you probably gained a lot of insight.
I did.
I know you would.
And by the way, just even with my own label, Melody Place,
right?
Which, I understand every facet now of how to release a record and what to do, everything from art to the release of the administration. I mean, you name it. I oversee everything, and I know how to do it. because I learned from Disney.
Right. Yeah. And it's such a great. I would do something like that if I got the opportunity. Just even if I knew it would be hard.
Yeah.
Just to learn what you might learn. You know,
it was nice also having an expense account.
Yeah, and you can have your own parking space and one of those little door cards that gets you in the door.
Exactly.
I'm jealous of all that because I mean, most people would trade with our jobs, but I know exactly what you mean.
It was fascinating, and I'm glad I did it. It wasn't all bad at all.
No. I didn't want to come off that way.
No.
I just tried to stir up a little controversy. Man,
it's fine.
Just for the listeners, to stir a little shit up.
No, I think it's good. I mean, but I think it does. It is a soul killer for someone who is by nature an artist.
Yeah, I think so. And that's cool. Let's talk about kids' music because I know, and we've never had anybody on. I don't want to, and please let me know when you need to go, but I want to keep you a little bit longer.
That's fine, but I want you to realize that we are here to sell.
No, and we're going to do that. That's where we're heading here, man.
I'm just kidding.
Stay with me. No, but since you're involved with that, I'd love to have you talk to us about that. Like point of view. Now, do you write these songs too? Are you producing and working with other writers? How does the records that you're making, how do they work?
Well, again, my background in children's music started around 1998 with an album called Disney's Lullaby album, which was just piano and guitar with strings, instrumental versions of songs, either Disney songs or other songs. And I produced them and arranged them in a lullaby fashion.
Okay.
And it went gold. It's a beautiful record and has put, a lot of kids to a very happy, sleepy time. And it begat 5 other albums of its kind. And I did tons of other records for Disney, writing songs, producing other people's and well-known songs, and for all sorts of what we called auxiliary albums for soundtracks. And so I did a ton of work for Disney, and it gave me the ability and the education of what really needs to happen in a kid's song. And so as a children's music writer, I'm very proficient because I know exactly what kids will listen to. I like the ease of it for me. I can actually write a kid's song in 5 minutes. Whereas after producing Jimmy Webb for 7 albums, if you want me to write a song like Jimmy, I'll sit in the corner and cry because to me, he's one of the greatest writers in the history of song, and I would never be able to write a song like that. However, on my new album, which is the first album on the label Melody Place that I own with Lee Shockey, this is my own record. There's no Disney involvement. I wrote the songs during the pandemic because I was away from my 2 grandchildren, ages 3 and 1. They're in Toronto and I'm in Nashville, and I couldn't be there. And it was lonely and miserable during that time. And I decided I would go to my studio every morning and write a new lyric and throw some music on it, because those are not hard songs for me to write. And I'd pick a subject every day that would be a different subject about things they might start to experience as children. And I wanted to do it as a way to make a record for them. It was only going to be a little private record, actually, and I wanted to make it for them so that they would have comfort and smiles and some entertainment and something to look forward to when the pandemic disappeared. And, I just wanted to bring some comfort to them. And so, I wrote, every morning I had a different subject. One morning was weather. The next day was cleaning the house with mom and dad. Next day I wrote a song about putting your kids to bed. I just, I brought in wonderful musicians one day at the Ocean Way, and I brought in Karen Richmond from L.A., who's a wonderful actress and a voice person, and 2 great singers, Troy Johnson and Tanya Hencheroff, from who I know you know well from here.
Both of them. Yeah.
And and I sang some songs myself, so it's called Fred Mollin with His Friends. But every song talks about something to look forward to when you're a small child, and they're easy to write. And I know the question you asked me is basically how I do it or why I do it in a way. And it just feels effortless to do it because you want it to be simple, and you want it to be understandable to the child, like a 3 or 4 year old child. And then that by 6 they're going to listen to what's on the radio. But you have them probably from about 2 to 4 to 5 years old. And so you don't want to ever play down to them, but you never want to play too far up. So, you just want to write songs that have a certain, not not cleverness in a way that is too clever, but just in a way that gets their attention lyrically and musically, keep it very simple. And so, I don't have to go through and try to find that right magical, incredible chord structure that Jimmy, let's say, would do, Jimmy Webb would do on a certain song. But, I do like to stretch out a little bit. So there's songs on here that I think are quite good as songs, but they're really, I really aim them because of my experience towards a child.
Fascinating. So you said what will make a kid listen or walk away.
I do.
Tell me. I want to know that.
Well, repetition and simplicity, obviously, if you're dealing with young children, energy is very important. We have, over the years, you'll always know that a child will gravitate towards a song with energy and an up-tempo thing because they start to move.
Right.
And if it's a little more like, well, here's one you got to really listen to, you got to be a little bit older to do that, So I do run the risk on this album. There's a few songs that are listening songs, much, much more than get up and dance songs. And clearly, my two grandchildren in Toronto, they're 3.5 and 1.5, and they're my barometer. And literally, the hits on the record are all the fast ones.
Right.
And the middle,
mid-tempo
ones are okay, and the one or two that are really quite poignant, they're just like, Mom, turn that off. They
want to rock. They want to rock. They like the energy.
So I, a lot of the Disney records I did had a lot of up-tempo stuff. It has to be charming and has to be, it also has to be musically, I think, and produced well enough and musically astute enough that the parents or the caregivers can listen to it too.
Excellent point.
Because you know what? I raised two children. My son is 37 and my daughter is 34.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard some of the stuff that they were listening to at their daycare and stuff, and it was junk.
Right.
Like it did play down to them. It was folk music done, folk people who really just had nowhere else to go, and they tried kids music, and I hated it. So when I started to do Disney stuff, I really started to do things that were really produced well and had great singers and great musicality to the things. And that gets the kids excited. Plus it also gets the parents saying, you know what, I don't mind listening to that one.
Right.
As opposed to the records I had to listen to occasionally. And I would say to my wife, take that record and you lose that thing, man. I cannot hear that again. And my kids deserve better,
Yeah, that's a great point to not aim down with it. Try to, as you know, I have 4 kids, and I always joke with people, but they came out exactly who they are.
Exactly.
You don't really, you have some shaping in their, some, but they kind of come out who they are. Yeah, and they are little people from the get-go, and you really can, this whole idea of it's just kids, it doesn't matter. Kids have a great sense of what's good and what's not.
Yeah.
I'm talking about my kids when they were 3 and 4, great critics of music. But I do, as you're saying it, my boys especially, they love to rock and run around the house, and they like songs. They love Johnny Cash and anything that was like funny and quirky. They love quirky.
Yeah.
And they love that energy. That's right.
I did, my children were children who grew up with a father who was a musician and arranger, producer, and I tried to get them into great music early on, and I hope that everyone does. But also I do hope that, when they're really young, you can make a record like, or I should say take a record like the one I just did, and see that it serves a purpose because it's communicating to them on a sort of pre-kindergarten level musically.
And you do hear a lot of, I'm sure there's a lot of great kids music, but through the years having 4 kids, all the preschools, the Mother's Day programs, all this stuff, I brushed against a lot of kids music, and I'm going to say I agree with you. A lot of it's just not very,
A lot of it are done by failed artists who can't write good enough for adults.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but there's
it's
possible. No, it's possible that what you're saying is true.
Well, listen, I'll be really frank. I'm not going to mention a name, but
now you're going to be frank.
No, I've been pretty frank the whole time.
You have.
No,
you have. That was a joke.
There's a very successful kids artist for many years, and who will remain nameless. And I used to play gigs with him when I was an up and coming singer songwriter, and he people would fall asleep during his sets, and he was a failed singer-songwriter,
right,
who became a wondrously successful, monumentally successful children's entertainer, and
right.
Not even a bad one in my opinion, but he wasn't able to write. He wanted to be, a James Taylor or or a male Joni Mitchell or something, and he couldn't do it.
Or, that was his path. That was the thing that worked for him. But I hear you.
I knew him, and it wasn't what he wanted.
I got you. And
but you know what? When the money started coming in,
and then
all of a sudden he really wanted it.
And you know what, Fred? That's not good. That's not good.
Yeah.
I agree with you, man.
Yeah.
Because I love music. I love it to this day. When I see people who've done this a long time, and these characters too, that are so burned out and messed up, it's like the reason you get burned out and messed up is that you don't respect music.
Yeah, yeah. But also, I want to tell you too something else that's critical. I'm not disparaging those kinds of artists I just mentioned.
I don't think you are.
Because the thing is, they got really good at kids' music. But I know that they always wanted the opposite. They wanted to be a singer-songwriter.
And we're not looking for really good.
Right.
We're looking for greatness. And greatness comes from loving something.
Yeah.
And there are people who, really connect with that, and that's what they're made to do. I fully respect what you're saying. And there's people in country music that the good thing is that it rarely worked, but it was you could often see someone come to Nashville who's like a failed rock or pop person who's like, oh, I'm come get this easy money now.
Yeah,
that didn't work out.
That really doesn't work out.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
No, they're like, oh, I'll come get some of that Nashville paper.
I don't think
it's just laying everywhere, and they're a bunch of idiots. I'll get it.
It
doesn't work.
No. You really you think it could, and it doesn't.
It doesn't.
That's never the reason to do something.
Correct. That's what I'm saying.
In the creative life we have,
it's on a practical level. What I'm saying is, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work, but I mean, it goes against everything I believe in as a creative person, which is to follow your muse.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, so it's great to be a kid, and we got to talk about one more thing before I let you go. But I want to make sure we stay on this.
Sure.
So this is just out now on your label, Melody Place.
Mm-hmm.
Which you learned how to do from being at Disney, which is good. Yeah. Disney, when I think back in my childhood of great kids music, it's obvious, okay, but I think they've always done it. One of my favorite things as a child was the soundtrack to Mary Poppins.
It's great.
Which is great.
It's a classic, great soundtrack.
And it's so many of the Disney things. And so I get the idea of you doing a kid's lullaby record. That would be really popular. There's like these great songs that can be set for, so it can be done. And there are great examples of people who've done amazing things with children's music.
It tapped into a part of me that I felt was really purposeful. I felt like, if I could make kids feel good with the music that I make, young children, I felt really proud of myself.
Yeah, right. Because we are in a business, and the business is to serve people.
Yeah.
And if you and I write a ballad tearjerker that makes somebody feel better that has a broken heart, or if we write a tempo that takes them off their problems for 5 minutes, or if you write a song that makes a kid connect with it, that's what we're here for. Yeah. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and so you take it to the next level, which is to write songs for children of a young age. You're doing a really important thing.
Yeah.
It's like being a teacher for, on some level, which is obviously, to me, I think teachers are the most underpaid and undervalued workforce in the world, especially in the U.S. They're mistreated and working 3 jobs, and
it's a disgrace.
It's a disgrace, and the amount of money they get paid, because if they got paid well and were treated properly, we'd have a much stronger country, because we'd have a more educated country.
We are underpaying the people who are entrusted to handle our most precious resource.
Our most precious resource, absolutely.
And who came up with that?
I don't know. And so that's why when I make records for young children, I take them really seriously, because I want them to be a source of comfort, education, love of music. I mean, all these things. If I can do that, that's the best thing I can do in my career. I mean, everything else is wonderful. If I can touch someone with the project I produce, like you said, touch them emotionally.
Yeah, even take them away for even a 30-minute TV show. It's therapeutic, man.
It's wonderful. But there's something about doing music for children.
I agree.
And don't forget, there's an irony here, and that irony is a lot of the TV and film I did were, horror movies, horror TV
not
series,
kids, not kid stuff.
No, so I mean,
that's great, man.
The fact that I became a Disney
180
person, total 180, but really that's much more who I am than doing the music for a Friday the 13th Part 7 or something,
Well, it's really great. It's great to be a kid, Fred Mollin. And are you streaming this record also? Or is it only
sure.
Okay, so they can find it the normal usual suspects?
Anywhere you can stream or download, as well as Amazon for buying.
Before you go, though, I got to ask you about Jimmy Webb.
Sure.
So now you said you've produced all of Jimmy's.
No, not all.
Or some of. Go ahead. Correct me.
Jimmy did a lot of albums in the early 70s.
Right.
That he had either different producers or he produced himself. And then George Martin produced an album, I think somewhere probably around 1977. And then Jimmy had no record label, and I went to the label that had done Sometimes When We Touch, which was 20th Century Fox in the U.S. And we had a great, Matt McCauley and I, my partner at that time. Jimmy had been someone I was just dying to work with. I felt he was terribly produced, as in not being able to show how great he could be as a singer. And I felt all the records, had the most brilliant songs and weren't really done the way I would have produced them. And I was a very precocious kid. And I remember having this great Hollywood moment sitting in the office of 20th Century Fox on Sunset Boulevard. And, we had just had Sometimes When We Touch. So we were like, they just adored Matt and I, and we were these two young Torontonians who, we're going to bring them lots more hit records, I guess. And Harvey Cooper, who I still remain in touch with today, I remember him sitting at his desk with his feet up with a cigar in his mouth. Classic LA moment. And he goes, guys, who do you want to produce next? Whoever it is, we'll get him. Now, I was never in music for money. Mm-hmm. I had no choice. I had to make music all my life. I wanted to have a life in music. If I could make money, fantastic. But it never drove me. It still doesn't. So I probably should have said to him something like James Taylor.
Right. Jackson 5.
Yeah. Elton John.
Yeah.
Jackson Brown.
Right.
And I said Jimmy Webb. And he looked at me like I had said something that was so just had the worst taste ever in his mouth. And he looked at me and said, why? Like, I really had disgusted him. And I said, because he's the greatest songwriter living, and I know we could make a record with him that would be a really important record. And he was like, all right, well, let me get his manager on the phone. And the next day, the manager's in the office. And he goes, well, Jimmy doesn't have a label. So he said, let's get you to meet Jimmy. And we met Jimmy, and he loved us, and we loved him. And I've worked with him all my entire life since then. And I've done, I think, 7 albums with him. And I think Linda Ronstadt and George Massenburg did one that I didn't do.
Who did is it 10 Easy Pieces?
Well, that's me. Yeah, that was the album that I did to save his life, because he was having the roughest time of his life. And
how much can you talk about? Because 10 Easy Pieces is my favorite record ever made.
Yeah, well, you're not.
I'm telling you. I don't want to freak out on you, Fred.
No, you're not going to freak out on me.
And I know, and I realize what I just said. And people listening need to understand. I understand what I just said. Okay, I grew up when the Beatles were making records. Okay, that record is my favorite fucking record of all time.
Yeah. Well, you're very kind, Chris.
No, I'm not kind. I'm telling you, it is.
I have to tell you that you're not the first one to say this to me. Generally, it's people like you, a great songwriter, will tell me, my favorite record is 10 Easy Pieces. And I'll say, well, I get it. The record was, we did it in 96. I was still in the middle of my TV and film successes. But Jimmy was having a very rough time in his life. He was going through a terrible divorce. He was doing things in his lifestyle that were not safe. And they were very unhealthy. And I'd known him since 78, and we were extended family. And I reached out to him because I had an idea. And the idea was to get him to come to Toronto out of Ground Zero and let me make this record of him doing his most famous songs, unplugged, maybe with a little bit of accoutrement here and there, but basically for the first time ever, his entire, sort of most famous 10 or 12 songs.
Mm-hmm.
And he fought me on it. He was living in Jersey, and I was in the middle of this horrific divorce, and he fought me a lot about it, and like, Freddie, those songs killed me, and I'm like, oh boy. And he explained that songs like Galveston, and by the time I get to Phoenix, and Up and Away, and which
If These Walls Could
well,
Talk.
no, that was later. So, but the early songs, the Glenn Campbell songs.
Wichita Lineman.
Yeah, he said to me numerous times, but he had to say it to me over the phone, that those songs killed him because he never was taken seriously the way a Jackson Browne or James Taylor or Joni Mitchell was taken seriously, or Neil Young, because he was the guy who was writing for the Republican Glenn Campbell, and he was the guy who wrote for that pop group, The Fifth Dimension, or he's the guy who wrote MacArthur Park for that Broadway guy, Richard Harris.
Mm-hmm.
And his cred was always shaky. And meanwhile, he was the most important, in my opinion. I think he's the greatest living songwriter. And still, to this day, I say that. And one of my greatest inspirations, which is why I started to work with him. I went to him. And so when he was having this very rough time in his life, I had to convince him to make this record. I had a record label. EMI had a label called Guardian. Jay Landers at Guardian said to me, here's a green light for this. I love the idea. If you can do it for $25,000, I'll give you a green light right now. And I'm like, the money didn't matter to me. I would have paid my own money to do it. And I said to Jimmy, I said, well, we have a label. You come to Toronto, you make the record. And he was like, no, I can't do it because those songs killed me. So finally I had to say, well, no one's really ever heard you do them. And you can really reclaim them. But the way I won him over was, he has 6 kids. I said, Jimmy, just do it for your children, so they have a record of you doing your most famous songs. Because at this point, he hadn't performed live barely. He was terrified of performing. So I didn't think the world would get to hear him do these songs either. And I wanted to have an album that would show his interpretations and his gorgeous piano playing.
It's unbelievable.
And finally, that is what won him over, was to do it for the kids. I got him out of harm's way. He was, it was rough because he was going through so much. And as I said, he was, battling a lot of demons. And we made a record that was the opposite of easy. So the joke of the title, 10 Easy Pieces, could not have been further from the truth. That came to him in a dream, where his mom, who died when he was 15, who he writes every song about when you think about it, came to him in a dream saying, Jimmy, call the album 10 Easy Pieces. Like there's a piano folio. It's called 5 Easy Pieces for piano.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very famous. So we called the album 10 Easy Pieces. And it is basically Jimmy on piano. And he was going through such a tumult that what we were able to put together, I guess we, meaning me, was lightning in a bottle, because I had this powerful, like, he started playing Galveston one night, the first night we worked, and it was a rainy night in Toronto, and we were at McClear Place Studios, and I had 2 pianos I had brought in, and one was a 9-foot, and he started playing an E over a C chord, so an E bass over a C for the first part of Galveston. Yeah. And the minute I heard that, it turned the song so dark. Mm-hmm. And then he sang. I was like, oh my God, this is, we're tapping into something that's so amazing. And so that record is going to be on my gravestone. It's on Jimmy's gravestone, because it is literally the most beloved record I've ever done, especially by the people that count, people like yourself.
Well, and I guess I don't really know. Maybe it's a cult classic, that record. Yeah, maybe it's not even a cult. Maybe it's out. The secret's out. But
it didn't sell a lot of copies, man.
I'm just telling everybody.
25 years later, we're doing a 25th anniversary version.
You want to hear a human being on planet Earth open a damn vein.
Yeah.
Okay, with no filter on humanity. Mm-hmm. Listen to that record. And now that you say this, it makes total sense. I got chills when you said it.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel what he's going through. Yeah. The renditions of the songs are so blood and guts.
Yeah, he was going through so much.
That's what it is, man. And not only that, add on top that what he's actually playing is some of the most brilliant pop/rock music ever composed. But the personal part, I think that's what you really feel. I can make about 15 seconds of any track on that record before I break down and cry. I can't even listen to that record in front of other people. It has a huge meaning in my life.
Thank you.
I'm sure maybe you've heard this before, and I don't want to weird you out. That record has a fucking huge. I went through a divorce, and that was the record that got me through it. That was the record that made me realize I was going to leave.
Yeah, I get it.
So I now understand what was happening.
It was. I mean, he was in such pain.
And you can feel it.
But it was a refuge for him, and it absolutely is both of our most. We're so proud of it.
Oh, you should be. It's a masterwork.
Thank you.
The moon is a harsh mistress.
Thank
you.
My
God.
Thank you so much. It means the world to me that you think that.
I mean, like you said, and I hadn't really thought of it. That opening chord of Galveston, it's a 1/3, right? And it's like blam, and 1/3, it's not necessarily a dark chord, but the way it goes right to the 4, so you got a chromatic move to the 4.
Yeah. I remember.
Tell us more about it. Tell us.
No, I mean, I remember hearing that and going, "Oh my God, that's the most emotional, beautiful way to do this song." That's why we started the album off with it. I do remember that Art Garfunkel came. I've worked with Artie numerous times, and he came up to me when we had a party for the release of the album 25 years ago. And I remember Artie saying, I love the record, Fred. He said, but he goes to the wrong chord at the beginning of Galveston. And I just looked at Artie. I said, well, no, it's not the wrong chord, Artie. I said, it's just a different voicing. And I said, it's really pretty powerful. He goes, no, it's the wrong note, Fred. And to this day, Artie says it's the wrong note.
It's the wrong note.
But it wasn't. It was just turning it into a gorgeous, sumptuous, dark, moment. And it's what that song needed. That song, Galveston, is one of the greatest songs ever written. And it wasn't a victory march about war. It was the opposite.
Good
it
Lord,
was a song, it was a song about being anti-Vietnam and anti-war.
Well, and it's about it's a Civil War song.
No.
It's not?
No, it's a Vietnam song.
I always thought it was a Civil War song.
No, it's about a kid from Galveston who wants to go home.
Revisit. Damn.
Wants to go home.
You've really made me think. I had never thought of Jimmy thinking that that people didn't really get him in the right category. I get it. I get what you're saying because I was a little kid during the 60s, but there was this what was groovy and what was not. And I get that.
He wasn't considered.
The Fifth Dimension was not.
He wasn't considered hip.
Well, those acts weren't considered hip. They were hits,
right? They were big hits,
but they were giant hits, and they were great effing songs.
They really were. Yeah.
And he was Listen, Jimmy Webb's my favorite. Now, some people will argue with me and say, there are names I would put up with him. Clearly, the Beatles are probably the greatest in the last 100 years. I would put Paul Simon in the top 5. I would put Jimmy. I would put, I don't know.
I'd put Randy Newman.
I'd put Randy Newman.
I'd put Joni Mitchell.
I don't know if I'd put Joni, but that's a little before my time probably, but I do respect that choice. But anyway, we probably agree. But anybody who's listening, that record, 10 Easy Pieces that Fred produced on Jimmy Webb, get a glass of wine and get some Kleenex. That's all I got to tell you. If you're a song person, now I got to say one thing to anybody listening. This is hardcores only, okay? You're not going to, it's not the, you're going into hardcore land. This is for people this is the real stuff. You know what I mean? This is like this isn't pink wine here. This is like 200-year-old from a small French farm. It's going to be complex. It's not going to be sweet.
Yeah, again, it's so funny that certain parts of my life are, they do, they resonate. I mean, with people. 10 Easy Pieces. that was lightning in a bottle. I mean, and it was a lot of work to make that.
Did you know when you were making it, did you think you were getting something special on tape?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you knew?
Oh, my God, yeah.
He's just a viciously talented guy. And he wrote all those songs by himself.
Yeah, he doesn't co-write really.
No.
He's maybe only co-written 5 songs in his entire career.
What a crazy thing.
Well, that's why I always felt he was the greatest, because he was...
Right.
Because he did everything, the lyrics and the music, and they were both brilliant,
Well, Fred, it's been an honor to talk to you, man. I appreciate you sharing with us the Jimmy thing. I know I dove harder than most people would into that, but
no, I'm thrilled.
Congratulations to being. I would be thrilled if I were you to be a part of that. That's just a masterwork.
And Chris, it's 25 years ago. October is when it was released, so we're doing a double CD, but not a CD. Universal is putting out, with me archiving and curating, a extended version of the album for its 25th anniversary digitally.
Oh, I can't wait!
And we'll also put out the original album on vinyl for the first time.
Wow!
And the bonus material are Jimmy's piano instrumental bed tracks of the album, so you can hear his gorgeous piano playing.
Well, also, it's your record out now. It's Great to Be a Kid. Fun songs about life and living from Fred Mollin and his friends. Another great record. Check it out.
It's available as product, vinyl and CD, on Amazon or you can special order it, but it's also digitally anywhere. You can download it or stream it.
Fantastic. Well, people still like to get CDs too, so they can do that on Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, and also, one of the things I've learned about kids' music is when you make a record and it's for young children, it's good to give it as a gift.
Yes.
You can't really you can't hand over a stream.
That's
but you can hand a CD to the parent, and that's a nice thing.
That
it's
is
a nice
good.
gift. Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that. That's right. You can add it as a and people love music for kids.
It's a good stocking stuffer for next Christmas.
Go. That's
so,
perfect.
Yep.
Awesome. Fred Mollin on Pitch List. Thank you, sir.
Oh my God. Thank you, Chris. I had a ball.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pitch List, produced in partnership with the American Songwriter Podcast Network. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcast or your preferred listening platform. And if you want, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating and review. For exclusive content from this week's guest and more, you can visit our website at pitchlistpodcast.com or follow our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. To hear songs written and or recorded by today's guest, check out this week's playlist by finding us on Spotify at Pitch List Podcast. Plus, don't forget to let us know on social media what songwriter, musician, or music business professional you want to hear from next. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.